All right, welcome to Hear About It Podcast, episode 2. If you're watching this right now, this is the most I've committed to any serialized project. When I get to 3, that will be bananas. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, do not be shy. You can reach me by email or Instagram in the links below. My guest today is Jen Urbanowski, who runs Centerpoint Ceramics in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Centerpoint is a community-centered, member-based studio that also offers lessons and classes. A membership to Centerpoint Ceramics gives you unlimited access to the studio, as well as all necessary tools, workspaces, and storage. The studio is following the COVID rules in place for the state of New York, so for now classes are suspended, but as soon as it's safe, they hope to hold classes again. In the meantime, the studio offers lessons or workshops at reduced capacity for individuals, couples, and small groups at any skill level. Links to find out more about the studio and check out her work are available below. All right, let's bring her in. Hey, hey, can you hear me? Oh, all right.
Okay, I can hear you.
All right, cool. Very
Great.
cool. Hey, nice setup there. What kind of plant is that in the background?
I don't know. We just call it Fernie.
That works.
It's from my partner's office. We had to go rescue it during quarantine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now it's found a good home. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, it was ours originally, and then her coworker rejuvenated it and it lived at the office. So now it's just like back with us, but just like significantly bigger.
That's great. That's great. So thanks for coming on today.
Yes, thanks so much for reaching out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we might as well start from the beginning. You're sort of set in place. You found your ceramic studio. So what's your origin story, so to speak? How did you wind up running this studio in Brooklyn?
Sure. So I had been a member of the studio for about 2 years prior to the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, the previous owner, she had actually moved upstate like about I don't know, half a year prior. And so the studio manager was really running everything there. And then when the pandemic hit, she had to switch to a system where people could only use like a certain amount of time to reduce the amount of people in the space because there had been like unlimited amount of people in the space. And so it was like during that time where I was able to kind of like grow as a ceramicist because I had so much more space and I was able to be a lot more focused while I was there. Granted, I love the social aspect of the studio as well, but I
Right.
was able to sort of just like zone out and like create a lot more work. Um, so that was cool. And I felt like I was like really getting a groove going with that. But then she reached out to everyone and said she was going to shut down the studio. And I was just devastated. It was like
Right.
the one place I could go during the pandemic that was like not my house, but also safe. And I have, I'd been a member there for a while and I love the people there and I love the space itself. So once I finished crying, I literally just looked at my partner and I was like, what if I buy the studio? Um, and she was like, well, you can reach out to Nicole. So uh, I was just like, well, I mean, it probably won't happen, but let me at least just like try. And at first, she was like very hesitant about the idea, the previous owner. And then she was like, well, maybe. And eventually, after like a lot of back and forth, she did agree that, she would she wouldn't sell me the studio, but she would sell me a lot of the equipment within it, and I could take over her lease. Because she actually started another studio upstate where she lived, so she needed a lot of the equipment, like the wheels and the kiln. So I needed to buy all that stuff myself, which was totally fine with me. Um, So that's like a really simplified version of like a month of my life that was in a completely and totally an emotional roller coaster of trying to figure out if I should even do it or if
Right.
it's insane to continue a business that depends on like people being in a space during a pandemic. And this was, back before like a lot of things were open again. Um, but we also reached out to a lot of the members and was like, hey, if we go back to our monthly system while still utilizing a checklist so that only certain people can be in the space at a time, so in a way so that everyone can be socially distanced, would you stay on as a member? And it was actually like doing that one survey with everyone where Nicole and I discovered that, you know, enough people would stay on that it wouldn't be like completely catastrophic, at least not at first. So
Yeah.
that gave me like an indication where I was like, okay, you know what? Let's do it. And it was just crazy because like one day me and my partner would talk about it. We'd be like, yeah, no, we definitely should not do this. And then like the next day we were like, oh yeah, let's do it. It was just
Yeah.
like absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I confided in like my friend group and my family and most importantly my mentor who like really helped me like walk through his thoughts, which was like really important as well. So it was a crazy time, but at the end of the day, I'm like so happy things worked out the way they did. It has literally given me like a reason to keep existing during this pandemic, just working on the studio all the time. So
Big
yeah.
big time, yeah. So, and that's really interesting how I didn't know that specifically about how you were getting into these longer and longer grooves of making ceramics and spending more and more time there, and then wound up not wanting to leave and taking on the whole thing. So,
Yeah.
so how does that feel actually sort of making that jump, and how does it feel to run a pottery studio as opposed to just creating in it? Are you still getting those times to create?
Yeah, so I love it because my previous background is in like production, like experience design and project management and production. So I am like pretty good at like all my spreadsheets and everything I need to do to keep organized and like keep on top of like running a small business. So that's actually been like really, really fun for me because I love doing that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So I'm not someone who ever wants to be a full-time ceramicist, like, that's not what I wanna do, but I do love running the studio, thinking about ways to make it better, interacting with all the members, giving tours, teaching people things, here and there. I mean, I'm not the teacher. Our amazing studio manager, Liam, is our teacher for our lessons and our classes
Right.
when we can do classes. And but yeah, just like being in the studio with people, not a lot of people, but
Right.
keep a lot of safe distance,
Yeah, yeah, of
is like
course.
really, really amazing. And it definitely is hard though, because when I'm at the studio and I'm like, okay, today I'm gonna take like 6 hours and I'm gonna dedicate that to like working on work. And it's definitely a bit of a challenge now because I'll be in the studio and I'll be like, oh, while I'm here, I should really like unbox some clay, or I should do a load of towel laundry, or like,
Right.
or like clean this or clean that or whatever. There's always like something that needs to be done. And so it's definitely hard for me as like someone who is always striving to keep this space like as clean and welcoming and wonderful as possible, to kind of like separate mentally from that for a second and just like kind of focus in on like creating. So
Yeah.
that definitely has been a challenge, but I feel like now that the insane Christmas rush is over, I'm able to
Okay,
like get
cool.
back in the groove. Yeah, I was like loading kilns or unloading kilns like every other day in December. It was insane, but
That's great.
really fun. I love doing that sort of thing. So it's like a big
Yeah.
puzzle.
Yeah, it is a puzzle. Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. It's like, especially, and I know that sort of balance between, this like sort of the addictive quality of kind of meeting everyone's needs and running this larger ship, and then having your own personal connection to the artwork. Absolutely. And you mentioned a mentor, which I hadn't heard about. So I'm curious about that. I think every artist could really use a mentor, and how has that relationship been for you?
Well, Charles is just like my life mentor. I've been working for him like once a month doing QuickBooks for his company for a really long time. I originally met him interviewing him for my senior thesis documentary that I did on the effects of Facebook on the personality and identity development of middle schoolers.
Wow.
I met him at a conference or something. I forget exactly what it was, but he was like one of the key people in my documentary. And since then we had stayed in touch. I, been working for him, and just over the years he's become like a mentor to me, someone who I can go to and be like, what's the deal with, like, I don't know, IRAs or stuff. I mean, actually, I don't know, that's not the best example, but
That's a
he's
good
also
example.
he's also like my mentor when it comes to like running, because I've gotten into running because of him. And he's also really helpful with my partner. She's into biking. And yeah, he's just like a triathlon guy. So he's like really into like that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
him and his family have just been like part of my life for like a really long time now. And, I just love them. And Charles was literally the first person I called when I was like, okay, I need to figure out if I'm insane for thinking about doing this or not.
Right.
And when I called my parents, they were basically like, do not do this. We will be disappointed if you do this. And they
Ouch.
were like very upset about it. And when I
Mm.
called Charles, he was like, okay, well, let's talk this out. And like he like asked me all the right questions, and we like talked about like, what do I need to break even? Like, what does that look like for me? If I lose like such and such amount of money, is that going to like really affect, certain things? Like I put like a huge chunk of my savings into this, and I
Wow.
didn't get any loans or anything. This was all just like money I had set aside, after working the last 10 years tr- with the intention of doing something like for myself, whether that was like buying property or if it was like starting my own business, which was a dream I'd always had. I just never really knew what direction I wanted to go in. Um, so he sort of just like talked me through like, what makes the most sense. And he was, at the end of the day, we sort of came out with like, if we can get, I think it was like 12 members to stay on,
Right.
then that's enough to keep going for now and hopefully grow. And if I can do that, then that is a point where I can feel comfortable enough to take this leap. But
That's
otherwise,
right.
maybe
That's
not the best
very
decision. So
that
he was really important for that.
that's very interesting that the number was literally 12 as well. I didn't know that. And especially about this thesis that you worked on. So I gotta lean into that for a second. Can
Oh
you
God,
give
that
it
was so long ago.
right? That's all right. That's all right. I would love just even two or three of the major things you remember from that thesis, just about what you learned that was shocking. Because
What?
I'm even in high school we were using Facebook. Like, there's
Yeah.
something wrong. There's something wrong.
The So what sparked it is through college I had like a ton of different jobs, and one of my favorites was always babysitting. And at the time I was babysitting this 11-year-old girl, and I would pick her up from school, and I'd bring her to her house, and we would do homework together. And then after she was done with homework, she would go online and like chat with her friends who she had just saw at school. And that was just like such a contrast to like me as a middle schooler. um like
Right.
I like once I got home, I didn't talk to anyone except for my sister and my parents, like,
Yeah.
so it was kind of just like, whoa, like what is this like world where you're like connected kind of like all the time? And granted, this was like back in 2011, so like obviously we're all connected all the time now, and sometimes I even feel like I'm the ones, I'm growing up with it too, because I went from like a young, like a young adult to like a real adult, and with it. But like it just kind of like blew my mind thinking about like what is it like for kids who are like literally 11 years old to be online and to be so connected all the time. And it was like inconclusive, but it was really just like a series of interviews with like professionals like Charles, parents, and young people. Uh, and I would say the biggest thing I learned was how long it takes to edit a documentary because it took freaking forever. Like it's actually funny. Like if you see it, like I'm taking screen grabs from Facebook and for the documentary, and you can literally see on my Facebook that my senior show is like that day, and I'm
Uh,
finishing it like the day of. But yeah,
uh,
it was fun. I wish I had like time management that better, but I did it all on my own. So it was a great experience, and it was, an interesting project. And there are now like a billion books about the subject, which I, obviously wish existed back then. I mean, there were resources back then, but it's definitely like something that a lot of people have delved into since then. 'Cause,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
of
this was
course.
10 years ago.
Yeah, it was 10 years ago. Yeah. All right. So, and then, so outside, uh, from the outside looking in, people would see where you're at and probably think it happened like magic. You have your studio, you have a long-term partner, but in reality, like you said, this is something you were building towards for many years,
Mhm.
and you didn't necessarily know what it was going to be, but you sort of landed on your feet here. So, what do you really attribute that to?
I mean, I definitely think I'm incredibly lucky. I think I attribute it to, you know, I guess I would say that I attribute it to my past experience. You know, I've had a lot of really excellent jobs in the past with a lot of incredible people who have taught me a lot. Um, I have, slowly discovered how to manage my own money really well. I mean, I'm not a professional or anything, but like, um, I enough so where I've been able to save enough. Like after I paid off all my student loans, I just was like saving because I've never really known what I want to do with my life. I've always just like really enjoyed a lot of different things, and I've really enjoyed like all the jobs I've had.
Right.
Um so I never felt like a strong pull in like one direction. So I just kind of was like, once I figure this out, like I'm gonna want to be able to do it. So I've just been like saving, and also like saving is just like a part of who I am as someone who was, concerned about like money. So, I've been living in
Yeah.
the city since I pretty much since I graduated. So, that's always, it's really expensive here. So it's always
Yeah.
something that's on my mind. Um and I if I didn't have, savings, if I didn't have like the drive to be like, what if I did this? If I didn't, which, my parents were really good at like instilling a sense of drive in me. Um, and I was, to actually like think about the risk and take the risk, I would just attribute to, having a lot of awesome people in my life, especially my partner who was there with me every step of the way in terms of deciding if this was like the right thing to do. Um, Yeah, I would say it's, my community, like the people at the studio. I would not have been able to do it if I didn't have people who were interested in staying on and willing to stay on. So I'm always like super grateful to, all the studio members. I'm super grateful to Nicole, the previous owner, for like working with me. She also taught me a lot, like in between
Right.
while we were transitioning ownership. Like she taught me how to load a kiln. She taught me how to, she taught me everything she knew about running a studio.
Yeah.
Um, and she just did that because she wanted me to succeed. And that
I
was
think
like
that's a bigger
incredible.
deal. That's a bigger deal than people might realize, is someone actually imparting that information.
Yeah.
rather than leaving you to figure it out for yourself. That's very, very good. Um, yeah, perfect. And were you ever tempted by any other businesses in the past? Did you maybe see a cafe and go, maybe it's that one, anything like that?
Well, not really. I sure, like, who doesn't wanna own a cafe, right? That's, like, so romantic or
I
whatever,
know.
but, like but, like, I was never, like I think, being so excited about pottery as a medium, as a hobby,
Mm,
really works so well with, like, incorporating it into a business. I Sure, like, I'm always interested in business opportunities. It's something I'm, always thinking about and aware of, and I love learning about, my other I have many friends who have their own businesses, and like learning about how they started, and, what they're doing is like always so inspiring and amazing to me. I just had
right,
never like really understood like what I would be good at, or like what made the most sense for me, until it sort of just was like, oh wait, like this is actually perfect. How like
right.
I'm so happy that I did this. So no,
Terrific.
I never felt any sort of like temptation before. I really had no idea what I wanted to do, and now I feel like this is it. This is so great.
Terrific, terrific. Yeah, I got to see some of your work before the interview. I was really taken by the ashtrays in particular. Actually, I might have to take up smoking just so I can buy one of those ashtrays. Or they're like little table type, um,
Yeah.
little bowls type
Mhm.
things. So let's talk about your sort of creative artistic process for a moment. You said you were starting to spend longer and longer hours, sort of making larger projects. And I was just sort of curious about that whole sort of moment. Do you have the piece that you're going to make preset in your mind always, or are you sometimes just you're sort of molding and you sort of figure out what it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it really varies. I find I'm like a lot more productive in the studio if I have some general idea of what I would like to get out of my day. Lately, I've been doing a lot of coil building, which is really fun because I feel like with that, you're sort of just like, you have an idea, or for me personally, I will have an idea of like sort of a form I want to create. It's usually like some sort of vase or a dish, or like a large platter or something. And as I'm going and building it, the clay is like malleable in a way. Like a lot of the time, if you make a bowl, you just like take a large piece and you press it down. I'm primarily a hand builder, I should specify. I am learning wheel slowly but surely, but like generally speaking, everything I make is like hand built. So that's like important to specify in the pottery world. So
Right.
as I'm like coiling, I'm kind of like able to shape things and like grow things in a way that I find is really, really fun. So I have like a general idea, but I am not like, okay, this is going to be a vase with like three separate holes and it's going to be connected like this. It's like, no, this is kind of like, I'm going to do a vase and I want it to be like taller than wider. And like, here we go. And I'll cut
Right.
out like a interesting looking base, and then I'll just go from there. Um, that is like my favorite way to work right now. So I would say it's definitely both. But if I also there are many times I go to the studio and like, I should make something. And then I'm just like, hmm, well, guess I'll just make a bunch of little dishes because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And to like really get into it, I feel like I need like like solid hours there. And the most productive day I've had recently was during this. There's been like one snow day in the city so far today, or this not today, this winter, and
Right.
that day I like went to to check on everything, and I ended up just staying in the studio all day, and I was like by myself. I had all the space available, and I was just there for like 6 hours alone. And I was just able to focus so much on my work. So that was like the most productive I've been so far
That's
in like
perfect.
the most recent month.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Oh, Also important to note about that day was I had done a photo shoot in the studio the day before, actually the one that came out yesterday on this Bushwick Life.
All right.
So I had
So
already the studio was already like very clean. So I had already taken care of like all the little tasks that needed to be done in preparation for that the day before. So
yeah,
no
yeah, I know what you mean.
distractions.
Yeah, no distractions, exactly. Just so you know, there is supposed to be a pretty big snowfall tomorrow into even the next day, at least in Connecticut. So maybe you'll get some
Oh,
of that where you are. Yeah, you might
yeah, maybe.
get another snow day. And
Sweet.
then, all right. So we talked a bit about we were hoping to see some of your favorite pieces that you've come up with. Do you have them handy, or are
I don't have
they?
them handy because I forgot about that, but I do have some right here, and then there's also some, just over there in a box, which I can grab.
All
So I
right,
can
yeah,
start
let's do
by,
that.
um this is my favorite vase that I've made. Obviously, it's got my flowers in it. So
Yeah,
this is a speckled clay body with a white glaze on it, which is like pretty popular right now, generally speaking. And my friend actually just bought one that's like really similar, and I was so excited he chose that one because I like love this form and I love like the glaze and speckled combo. Um,
cool.
then this is a vase that's like the opposite. It's black clay and black glaze.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you can see like the
no,
yeah, it's
I
like this
like that
got this
one.
like yeah, and you can't really see the detail of the glaze, but it it's got some depth to it, which I think gets like washed out right here. All right, and
There's
then
a shimmer going on. I don't know if it's the full thing.
perfect.
All right, cool.
Then
We gotta queue up some elevator music.
do, 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 do.
All right.
So these little guys, also vases. These I love because they actually go through the kiln this third time. Generally, everything goes in once for bisquing, then it gets glazed, and then it goes into the glaze kiln again, and then it comes out and it's ready, and it looks something like this. But this I put into the glaze kiln a third time because I do this clear crackle glaze, and then I do after that comes out, I do a clear over it. And these I love. I made a set of 6 of these total, and some of them are for sale up in a shop in Saratoga called Collective 131.
All right.
And so I really love those. And then
Saratoga, that's like New York State, right?
yeah, it's
Okay.
upstate New York. It's like an hour above Albany, I think ish.
Right.
Um,
Who knows what's going on out there?
yeah. And then here's another. Okay, I guess all my favorites are vases. Honestly, I've been making like a lot of vases lately. And honestly, most of my bigger work is at the studio. Which I'd love to show you guys at some point if you're interested.
Yeah,
Obviously not
definitely.
tonight, but I'm also really happy with how this one came out. This is another black on black, where it's like a drip of the glaze, and then like I left the clay raw on this side. So I really like this one too.
Yeah, cool. So
And then
you paint before the glaze, right?
so I don't really paint the pieces. I tend to dip most of my glazes. Um,
Oh,
at the studio, we have like big buckets of glazes that I mix by hand, actually. Well, me and my studio manager, he's a huge help when it comes to mixing glazes and everything around the studio. He's amazing. Um,
right.
so they're in like these 5-gallon buckets, and I have to wear like a gas mask basically when I mix them because the chemicals when they're airborne are toxic. So I have to like measure out all of the chemicals like a mad scientist, and then mix it all with water, make a huge vat of glaze, and then generally people dunk their pieces in there. Then we also have some commercial glazes as well, and that's more like the kind that people paint on. Like I have some pieces right here, like this piece I used wax resist on around to create this pattern, and then this is a commercial glaze that I painted on around it.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a great one.
Oh, thank you.
Is
Yeah,
that a
this was a test.
is that a cup or a vase, or it could be either or, right?
It's just a cup, yeah.
I don't know. I like that one. That's really cool.
And Then I did make this one piece that I'm gonna go grab from the living room because
All right.
it's pretty cute. I'll be right back.
All right. Very cool. You are watching Hear About It podcast. This is episode 2. This interview, in my personal opinion, is going very well. All
Oh,
right.
you guys, you can see I'm actually wearing sweatpants. Oops.
Caught you.
Just like everyone on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So this is like something I made in the studio just super randomly the other day. It's like a bowl, but it's like a cat paw. So, for smoking tobacco only, right? So I was
Here,
like
hang on
really
one
excited
second.
about
One
this
moment.
piece. This is the first bowl I ever made. So and it just kind of like ended up looking like a cat paw, so I went with it. So that's that. You're totally frozen right now. So I can't tell
Yeah, you're
if you
frozen on
saw it or
my
not.
end. Shoot. Oh, wait. Here you go.
Oh no.
Here, one second.
Am I back?
I'm about to resume. Oh, okay. All right. Let's get back to it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, where did I get dropped off?
You were about to show me your favorite thing that you've
Oh,
made.
okay, cool. So it's not my favorite thing I made. It's just like the most unique thing I've made lately. It's a pipe, but it's a
Nice.
cat paw. So yeah.
Got it.
I've never made a pipe before, but a few of the members were making them in the studio, and I had some extra clay. As you can tell, it's like the black clay. I was like, you know what? I should try to make a pipe, and then it kind of ended up looking like a cat paw, so I just went with it. So that's like a fun piece I've made lately.
I think if you hosted a pipe making class, you'd be set.
It is actually one of our options in our hand building lessons. So, if you have a group of 3 or 4 friends and you want to learn how to make pipes, it's definitely one of the options we have. Liam's really great at making pipes,
I
and
would
he's our
love that.
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, that's like, Nicole also offered pipe making workshops. It's a very popular item to make
Yeah. You could do
because it's so
axe
useful.
throwing, pipe making, and then go to a beer brewery or something all in one day. You check off, or like a whiskey distillery or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Just all the vices at once. So, right. So, and then you have people coming and making all these different pieces. It seems like a great outlet where you invest a lot of time in a very meditative practice, and then you also come away with something very practical. Do you think people come more for the process or the product, or sort of both?
I think a lot of people come for the process. Uh, I mean, and I just want to emphasize that like the members that are at the studio are so amazing. Like, and one of the things I absolutely love about running the studio is getting to know people's work really well because I'm always the one that loads it into the bisque kiln and then the glaze kiln. Not always, but generally.
Hmm.
And so I've gotten to know everyone's work, and it's been like really amazing to like watch them grow even over just like the last 6 months. And it is something that I think people go for a lot for the process, to be in a space that is focused on creating, to be somewhere where they can just sort of zone out from the world and like focus on making something. And not everything people make is practical, but a lot of stuff is. We have one member who's been making a lot of really awesome lamps. We, people make everything. It's really
Right.
cool.
And that was actually my next question. Like, are you sort of set for dishware for life? Do you even have do you even have any pieces that you haven't made, or do you have like?
Yeah, we primarily just use this like light, I think it's called Carrera ware or something like that. Corel ware, I don't know. Um, and it's just like light and durable because ceramics is heavy. Like I have some
Right.
ceramic plates I made, and like if we're doing like a brunch, like I'll bring them out and it looks so cute or whatever. But like generally just like having a snack, eating dinner at home, like we just use like regular old plates because they're like a lot lighter and easier to like wash and use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'll probably never buy plates again. Also, one thing to note about plates is they're actually like kind of pretty challenging, and they also take up like a lot of space in the kiln, which is annoying. So generally, personally, I don't make that many plates.
Right, right. I didn't know that. Yeah, you would think plates would be the easiest. Huh. All right. So, and then, so we were going to talk a little bit about sort of political involvement for our generation, basically. Because in my personal feelings about the events that have happened in the past few years, basically, really since 2016 and onward, um, you know, for our generation called millennials, uh, we seem to be in some ways, I would say, discouraged from participating politically. It's either we're not saying it right, or um, you know, we don't know enough, or something like that. And now I don't know if you've heard this. I saw some news source about um, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that certain we needed to learn to differentiate between different news sources and different news outlets. And we were talking about it, and I sort of try to be involved. I listen to like a really good piece from Democracy Now every now and then. And in my personal opinion, people really do have plenty to do. And if they can dip their toe into politics, that's incredible. But as we were talking, you actually um, read a lot of news, and actually, you do use several different sources. So I was hoping you could talk a bit about that.
Sure. Well, I think, it's a vital time to be paying attention to news. I think it's very important to be aware of what's going on. I mean, at the same time, I completely understand like the drain, like especially with COVID, it's just so depressing all the time. So I understand the desire to step away from that sometimes. But overall, I think it's just vital to know what's going on. And I think, you know, I think it's important to remember that when you do step away, that is kind of like a privilege to have, because there are many people who can't step away because they are like in the forefront of like all the terrible things that are happening right now. And I do think it's important to have many news sources. I think it's important to talk to people about it. I think it's important to, participate in your community and participate in, everything that's going on, and try to, I mean, I'm I'm not saying that I spend a lot of time on it
No,
really. I'm just saying that like I think it's an important thing to stay aware of and like participate however you can.
I'm really just trying to defend millennials because I think here we are. Of course, we want to live and participate in the world. Um, and of course, we have opinions, and of course, we would love for them to be heard. And you know what? Some of them aren't too bad. And right. So, but you said your sources were Robinhood. Um, and
Yeah,
then
I would
did you,
say they're primarily like WNYC. I get their newsletter every morning, and then whenever I'm driving, I listen to it in the car. I would say then I also get a newsletter every morning called Need to Know. And then I also get a newsletter every morning from Robinhood, which is like an app for trading stocks that I use. Um, so yeah, and then, I also get news from not really Facebook. I really only use Facebook for the pottery groups.
yeah,
But I
that's
do spend way too much time on Instagram. Like I need to cut back. But I do get a lot of news from there because I follow politicians, and I also follow like NPR, and PBS or whatever, like a bunch of different like
yeah,
news outlets. And I also get New York Times alerts to my phone. So
yeah. I
I
just
see the
did
big
the.
news when it comes in.
That's cool. I just did the subscription to the New York Times, and apparently at the very beginning of the pandemic, the an astronaut gave his advice for living in isolation. I was like, I really wish I'd read that when it came out. I just read it a few weeks ago. Um, right. So now that pottery is your main line of work, are you still able to unwind with pottery? Do you have other hobbies? You mentioned cycling, which I think is really cool. That's a great one.
Oh, I'm not the cycler. My partner's the cycler. I've been running. That's been my thing for like the last year or so, which was a huge help. I know this is like mad cliche, but like it was a huge help for being able to like clear my mind and sort of like think about things like while I was trying to make the decision to go forward with the studio or not. That was like the biggest time where I was like, yeah, this running thing really, really is good. And now
Yeah,
generally, I just I love running. I mean, I hate it during. I do hate it during, but
good to
after
know.
it's great. And I've been really trying to stick to a run schedule that Charles made me. Um, so yeah, and I do feel like I'm definitely like the most fit I've been ever in my life, which feels
Right.
really good, especially because I have to lift 50-pound boxes of clay very frequently now.
I
So
didn't
it's
even
good to
think
be
about
fit.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, and 50-pound bags of chemicals and heavy buckets full of stuff. So, yeah, this is definitely the most physically demanding job I've had as well. But getting
Oh,
back to
wow.
your question, I feel like I definitely can still unwind with clay. I love being at the studio to create things. But I also, there's a lot of, I have like a lot of fun doing a bunch of different stuff. Um,
Yeah.
this, yeah, so I've always had like a lot of different hobbies. Like I was just trying to fix and finish up a macrame project that I started last winter. Like I make the bottom of a like a hanging planter and then I do the macrame for the top. So I've made like two completed ones of those, one's to dear friends and one's to my grandparents. And then I'm trying to finish up another one for my friend. Um, and like right
Nice.
now, during normal times, my partner and I go out a lot. We love going out to dinner and we love to travel. And, we also love to dance. So the sun comes up sometimes. But now that we can't do that, we're working on like a 1,000-piece puzzle, which is about as crazy as it gets right now. So
I mean, when you finish it.
yeah,
That's
such a
very
thrill.
totally. Speaking of, one of the things everybody I think is going to want to do the most is travel when this is over. For me, I think the place I miss the most that I've actually gotten to see is Scotland. Maybe
Oh,
it.
sweet.
Oh yeah. Like I wasn't even into whiskey before I went, but when you go there and you get to tour all the different distilleries and learn about the history, it's just great fun. And so what about you? Do you have any dream travel destinations for when you're a freer person?
Yeah, definitely. So it was actually crazy because my partner and I went with one of our best friends to Taiwan, like right as the pandemic was hitting,
Uh,
exactly a year ago. And that was an amazing trip, but it was kind of like tainted by the pandemic a little bit. Like, my parents were like literally begging me to come home every day, which I understand, their parents, their job is to worry. But and I did, there was like 3 cases in Taiwan at the time. There was like no
wow.
way we were actually gonna get it, but just like being on the flight for like 14 hours, it was just like a little bit scary. So I would love to go back to Taiwan like after this is all over and um first of all, because it's amazing, and second of all, to like visit more cities and places that we weren't able to go, and to also
Right.
explore, just feel like that weight lifted off my shoulders.
Big time.
And then there's just, what has been really cool about traveling now is I feel like we've gone to places that we wouldn't necessarily have gone to. Like we've been doing, not right now, but actually, yeah, we're going to the Finger Lakes next weekend. But generally, back when it was like warmer out, we were doing like trips that were like drivable. Like we went to New Hope, Pennsylvania, we went
Right.
to New Bedford, Massachusetts, we went to Lake Champlain,
I
all like
I know about New
very like
Bedford.
safe, local, not local, but like, you know, we're not flying anywhere.
Right, that you
So I
maybe
think like, hmm,
sorry,
sorry.
that you maybe might not have seen if not for the pandemic. You wouldn't have thought to go.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's been cool. But my God, I just want to go back to Europe. I really want to go to Spain and Portugal
That's on my list
and
too.
Greece and then back to Italy. Those are probably my top choice. Those are
Yeah.
probably my top destinations right now.
Those are great. Yeah, Spain and Greece are the yeah, I think if I did those, I would be like, okay, if we're really locked down forever, I got these many. Spain and Greece are great. I mean, I haven't been there, but those are on my that's the top of my list as well. Very cool. I hate to double back from that, but so you heard about the virus in Taiwan in January.
Um, well, so the virus was not in the United States yet when we went. So it was still pretty much just in China. And we had originally were thinking about booking flights that went through China, but then, you know, I'm kind of a brat sometimes, and I was like, no, we're gonna do direct flights because it wasn't very much more, and the flights were already like pretty cheap as they were considering it's Taiwan. Um,
Wow.
so thank God we didn't do that because then we wouldn't have been able to go. But it was like it was like, yeah, I think it was like maybe this time last year we were just getting ready to go. And it wasn't like that bad yet at
Right.
all, but it was like there. And you know, I was like, oh my God, like it but it was in China. And it was the thing
Yeah.
about Taiwan is it's very close to China, but there were still like barely any cases in Taiwan at all. And they've continued to have like incredibly low case rates. Like
Wow.
they've been like one of the best at combating the virus overall. Like after I got home, my dad was pretty much like, okay, I want you guys to go back to Taiwan now because it's way safer there than New York. Um, yeah, and by the even like even once we came home, like things in New York were still fine and like totally normal for like at least 2 weeks. At least maybe even 3 weeks, and then everything shut down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jen, that was great. That was so interesting. And yeah, if you're willing, we'd love to see the studio somehow and learn some tips about pottery. That would be excellent.
Yeah, I'd love to give you guys a virtual tour.
All right, that would be awesome. Yeah.
And during that episode, I can tell you where the name came from.
Yes. All right, let's do that.
A
We'll
little
tease it.
teaser.
Tease it. Yeah, very cool. All right. Thanks again, Jen. Have a
Thank
good
you so
one.
much, Will.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
later.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.